made it in one piece into Madeira. The landing's a little bit scary. Not quite as bad as Wellington, but getting there. Now, Madeira is a very small island. It's about 500k off the coast of Africa, but it is actually part of Portugal, and the people here speak a mixture, well, mostly Portuguese, but they also do speak English as well. It has a very close relationship with Britain. It's about 57k long at the longest point, 27 wide, and the highest point on the island is 2,000 metres above sea level. Because of its very unique climate and the nature of the island being very steep and mountainous, the wines that were grown here traditionally became very distinctive, and owing to some accidents of history, as we're going to find out about, they came up with some unique ways of making wine, or fortified wine, that became known as Madeira. But believe it or not, this place we're standing in front of is our €32 a night hotel. Not bad, eh? All right, we'll see you soon.
My name is Anna. I'm one of the PR assistants in the winery. They're holding about 4 million litres of wine. So this is really just a small sample of our production. But in the other building, from late August until beginning of October, that's the time of the harvest, is where they take the grapes, press, ferment. To stop the fermentation is when they add the wine alcohol, and only after that, only after the wine being fortified, that's when the winemaker, he classifies the wine, selects the wine, some to be brought here, but most of the wine really stays in the other building because it's a huge building. Here he says, the winemaker, that he just sends the best wines, a potential vintage. So we tend to say this is the lucky building as well. It's really where everything started. It's the historical part of the company, and where we have some of the best wines as well. And we don't have any controlled temperatures in this building. It works a bit like a natural greenhouse. For example, normal summers, the temperatures here, it varies about 25 to 28 degrees Celsius. And then in hot summers like we had last year, not extreme, thank God, because the humidity in the island is also quite high, but in the upper floors we had here last August about 35 to 38 degrees, which was a bit too much for us. But for the wine, this is great, because it's the heating really that gives that special taste to Madeira, kind of a burning taste, a certain caramel taste, even the color of the wine. For example, when we're having Malmsey, I think it's the best example, a white grape like Cercial, but if you have these two wines, it's almost extreme colors, especially when they are younger wines, because Malmsey, being the sweetest of all, during the heating, there's a natural caramelization of the sugars. That's why the sweeter the wine is, darker, or it really has that dark brownish color from the caramel color. So the heating is what gives the characteristic to wine. These are very famous wine bags, the goat skins, which they used them a lot in the old days to carry wine, the grape juice, from the countryside to the city. Nowadays, of course, we buy the grapes from the farmers. The company, for example, we don't own vineyards, so we buy the grapes, we bring the grapes to the city, and we have another building which is about 10 minutes from here, and they have very mechanical presses. So now everything is pretty well, the grapes already crushed in the city, all the vinification is done here in the city. You still see men carrying these things just to show us how they used to carry the wine, because carrying wine, well, from north of the island or from the countryside, from the southwest, it's where we have a lot of the vineyards, to the city, it wasn't easy. Even small barrels, too heavy and hard for their bags. And the goat skin empty, as you can see, quite light. They say it was discovered only after a voyage to India, after crossing the equator. It was in the 18th century. Until then, they produced a lot of wine in Madeira, but it was just a common table wine. And because of the sea voyages, they always had a lot of ships stopping here for water, food supply. they start taking the wines. Well, I don't know if it was to help to ballast the ships or just to consume during the journeys, probably both things, but they start adding the brandy at the time, the rum from the sugarcane to help to preserve the wine. That's why today it's a liqueurs wine, even though we have already table wines in Madeira, but the typical Madeira is really the liqueurs wine. And after that voyage to India, passing through the equator with those high temperatures, they say the wine change was much better, but no one could really explain the difference. They didn't know if it was the heating or the motion of the sea. So as they were not sure, it is said they would just keep sending wines to East, West Indies, and only after the wine came back they would sell the wine. They used to call those wines in Portuguese vinhos da roda. Vinhos, it means wine, roda wheel, so it had to go around and around. It was a great voyager, and so only after voyaging, that's when they used to sell the wine. I don't know how many years after they realized had nothing to do with emotion, just the heating. So they start recreating in the island the heating process. This heating that you find here in the building, the natural heating, it was not the initial one. The initial one was the estufagem, which is an artificial heating, which we're still using in a winery for the 3-year-old wine. That's the one produced from Tinta Negra, the biggest production and the biggest exportation as well. So after adding wine alcohol to the Tinta Negra juice, they put the wine not in these wooden casks, but first they go to those greenhouses they call the estufas, which they have controlled temperatures from 40 to 45 degrees. The purpose really to speed up the aging, to accelerate the aging of the wine. Having the wine there for 3 months is like having wine here for about 1.5 years. After that, they cool down the wine gradually to 20, 21 degrees. Then they go to the wooden cask for another 2 years, blended, and the average age is a 3-year-old wine. So if you have a 3-year-old Madeira, that's the exception, really. Always Tinta Negra, doesn't matter if it's dry, or rich, medium rich, and the 2 different heating process. And on the label, you never have the name of the grape because it's not considered traditional. So they just write the style. Minimum 5 years old, that's the youngest we have here in the company, from white grapes and just natural heated. And those, you have already the name of the grape on the label. If it's Moms, if it is Boal, and the age as well. Because Madeira, as it only aged in wood, the age you see on the bottle, that's the time it was in the cask. So if you have a 5-year-old, even though it's a blended wine, because these wines, only vintage really are single years, all the others, they blend them. But the youngest blend had to be from 5 years. So 5, 10, 15-year-old, just natural heating. The vintage wines, or the culitas as we call them as well, the baby vintage, these are single years, single grape, and they have to stay a bit long in cask. For example, a culita, or harvest, stays in cask for 12 to 18 years. We stopped producing only 3 years ago, these culitas and harvest. The vintage wines, which are our classic ones, they have to stay minimum 20 years in cask. For Madeira, only these grapes, and by law they have to be grown here, otherwise they can't call it Madeira. Of course, initially they had to be brought in. For example, Cercial, that was the grape, they brought it from the Rhine Valley. They compare a lot to the Riesling grape, that's the driest one. You find more certain acidity as well. The Verdelho was the one brought from Italy. In Italy is the one they call the Verdicchio. It's very aromatic, very fruity grape. They also use for some of the white table wines in Madeira. And in terms of Madeira, probably it's the less popular, because I think it has something to do with the name of the grape. Once people try it, they say it's one of the easiest wines to like. Very well balanced in acidity, sugar content. Our winemaker, he loves to have Verdelho with foie gras. If you do like strong and spicy cheeses, I recommend. With a 10-year-old Verdelho is great for those kind of cheeses. And for example, if it's a younger one, like a 5-year-old with soups, consommé, well, Madeira is really quite versatile. It's not just aperitif and dessert, really. The Boal was the one brought from Burgundy. Is related to the Chardonnay grape. Produces the medium sweet, not as full rich as Moms. It has a drier finish, very natty. It's lovely for the soft cheeses, desserts with creams, for example, the dry fruits, fruit cakes, and chocolate. You have to forgive me, but it's impossible talking about Boal without mentioning chocolate, really. If you like chocolate, I recommend you a glass of Boal with your chocolate dessert, or Moms with dark chocolate as well. Actually, you should have with both, and then you choose which is your favorite. But there's not a lot of wines that goes well with chocolate. Madeira is one of them, so you have to try it, okay? The Malmsey, which is the one brought from Crete, so the original name is the Malvasia, so it was the first one, that's why it's the most popular. Very, very mellow, has that toffee taste. It's a traditional after meal, but matches also with the quite a few desserts. So we just have to use our imagination as well. So these four, they produce 5, 10, 15-year-old vintage. They are our main varieties. The other two, these two here, which are small bunches, they are the ones I mentioned only for vintage, the Terrantes and Bastardo, and the Tinta Negra, which is the vintage vinifera between the Pinot Noir and the Grenache, is the one that produces 3-year-old wine. So 90% of the production is Tinta Negra. So it can produce dry, medium dry, rich, medium rich. Just depends the altitude they grow the grape and length of the fermentation. So it's like our chameleon grape.
As you can see, the Madeira is basically a great big mountain sticking out of the ocean. This means there's not a lot of flat land, which is usually handy for farming crops. But because the grapes here grow in such a special way that gives the Madeira wine its unique properties, they've gone to all this great effort of making terraces all up and down the hills to grow their plantations of grapes and also banana, which you can see about. Originally the original crop was actually sugarcane, but they soon found that it was much more profitable to grow the sugarcane in Brazil and to use this land for its special qualities of growing this particular grape. Now, one of the other aspects of the fact that it is terraced like it is means that of course they can use no machines to harvesting, and because all Madeira must be made from grapes grown in Madeira, therefore the method used is pretty much the same as it always has been, hand harvesting the grapes in August when they're ready to go. Of course it's only May, so they're not ready yet, but the only thing that will have changed of course is they're not using goat skins or donkeys to carry the pressed wine down to the factories anymore. They're using trucks and cars. Believe it or not, Madeira has been usually quite sunny on this trip so far. It's just it does get the bit of rain though, and that of course keeps everything green.
We stabilize the wine by cold. Yeah. To take out the particles and stabilize the wine to be clean at the lowest temperatures.
Yeah, so it's coming in at what sort of temperature?
A temperatura que está mais ou menos. Temperatura
7.6, 7.4.
negativo. That is the temperature he's colding the wine.
How much it's cooling it down?
Yeah, minus 7.4.
Okay.
To stabilize and to...
Oh, so it's actually going down to -7?
Yeah.
Oh wow. No, that's all. I see.
What we wanted to take out from the wine, some tetrads, solid parts that would
powder.
Yeah, and put the wine without the aspect of the wine in the glass could be awful.
Right.
So in this part we stabilize the wine to be always clean and crystalline and clear, very clear. Right. It's very crucial.
Posição para filmar, né?
Disseram que eu podia ir a toda a zona da
Agora
empresa.
tem que consumir, não assim.
Isso só recebi agora de manhã, pensei.